How much do you know about artificial intelligence and how it's impacting your business? And how much time do you have? How much time do we all have? How much time do we have before we get left behind if we don't figure it out? If you want to know some answers to these questions, tune in and find out.
You are listening to the Prosper at Law podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosper at Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, but in the Graduate, Dustin Hoffman plays a recent graduate. So they're having a party at his house, and all his friends and people from his parents, is more so than him. All the parents are over there, and these people have different careers and different businesses and things. And in the Graduate, Dustin Hoffman is just, doesn't know where his life wants to go. He doesn't know. He doesn't have an intention. He's like a lot of people. You go to college, and then that's as far as your plan went. You don't. Some of the most amazing people are people who are driven and purpose-driven at an early age, a very early age, but certainly, say, in high school and college. We all went to people, we all knew people in college that, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they were working on their future business while they were in college, doing different things, whatever that might be. And then there was the rest of us who were in college, and because we were supposed to go to college, so we're in college and we don't really know what we're going to do. I remember that when I was in college and I had the intention of going to law school, and everybody I knew in my major and that sort of thing would tell me, "You're so lucky, Greg, you're so lucky because you know what you're going to do after college. You're admitted into law school, you're going, we don't know where we're going." And that was Dustin Hoffman. He was just lost. He had graduated, but he was lost. And there was this scene where, because all those parents, friends, and people were coming over and asking him what he was going to do. And this one guy, the character in the movie, looks at him and says, like while he's standing there holding a drink, says, "I got one word for you. All you need to know is plastics." Because at that time, plastics was the cutting edge technology. That's where everything was going in business. If you wanted to be on the cutting edge, you needed to know about plastic. And of course, the character that Dustin Hoffman played had no interest in that. So it was just, a kind of a dumbfounded look. So what's going on now? Well, now, what's today's plastic? Well, for business owners and law firm owners, anybody that runs a business that has employees, anybody that has tasks and things to do, it's AI. Artificial intelligence. AI is the rage. Everybody looks at AI and says, what can this do for my business? How can this give me more efficiencies? How can this reduce my payroll? How can this reduce my costs and then do a better job? And in this kind of situation, I've been going to seminars and lawyer growth summits and all of these things forever. And some of the things that I belonged to were, they were either general practice areas, or, grow your law firm, and they coached every kind of law firm that there is. And then there were also a lot of things that I went to that were more focused on personal injury lawyers. So the personal injury lawyers dominated it. And so a lot of the conversations and things are for personal injury. And personal injury is it's just very different than criminal defense. And there's so many different parts of it that really have nothing to do with criminal defense. For example, intake and signing up cases. I've heard people talk about intake and say that if a personal injury lawyer increased his conversion rate from 98% to 99%, in a big practice how much more money that is. And in criminal defense, the conversion rate is not 98% because people want to hire you, they contact you, they like you, but then they have to come up with the money for your fees. And if you've been practicing criminal defense, you know that's an issue. The other thing is personal injury lawyers, when they're trying to increase efficiency, they're talking about things like time on desk. Okay, what is time on desk? That's the period of time before settlement, and trying to increase the efficiencies there. So the so-called time on desk before settlement, if you can reduce that period of time, then you get your money faster. And they talk about all of these things. So as I go through this, and this really probably, the first time I started hearing a lot about this was probably the COVID year. And a lot of seminars I went to, and good seminars, and they had speakers and people explaining it. And most of the things they were explaining were process, the process of settlement, the process of getting the file together, getting the demand letter together, figuring out ways to, systematize that so that that was more efficient and it was better, more work was done with fewer people to pay to do it, and kind of reduce the, the human element. And so I would sit there and listen to it, and I would think about it and think, I know it, I think it's important. It's obviously huge. It's changing the world. But trying to see, how does this apply to me? What do I do in my criminal defense law firm? Do I get an AI, bot to answer the phone and do the intake? Do I get an AI bot to contact my clients and let them know, where court is and when court is? And I was thinking, we don't do the demand letters and things like that. So I didn't quite see it. I knew it probably mattered, but I just couldn't see it. And if you look at what we do, where do we have a large volume of discovery? And my law firm, Complete Legal Defense Team, it's what I call a general criminal defense law firm. It's not a white collar federal criminal defense law firm. And I've done those cases, and I've done some big cases. I did a case that lasted for years in federal court, and it was quote my case, and I hired all these white collar lawyers, and they were from different states and different regions, and I brought them in. I was the one with the client. The client signed with me, paid me the fees. All the fees went through my law firm. They all went through my IALTA account. And the lawyers that I basically hired, I contracted with them. They signed a representation with me that I will agree to represent this particular client, because I think there were five or six defendants. There were principals and then other people that lower down in the company. And so in doing that, and this was, if you're talking about a big case for a criminal case, the fees, I think the fees were somewhere between $2 million and $2.3 million or something like that when all was said and done. So it's a big case, it's big fees, and it involved a business that spanned about 25 or 28 states where they did business. And so you had records and all these things. And so back then, I say back then, it was really not that long ago, there were programs. There was, I think one was called Relativity, and then my clients actually developed a better program, and it was just to go through the document dump, because if you've done these cases in federal court, you know how it looks. They give you the discovery, it's disorganized, they just pile it on you. They don't do anything to outline their case. They're not showing you, these are the important parts, but we're going to give you everything else. It doesn't matter. And so I saw it in that context, where there's these programs, and I don't think this wasn't AI, but these programs would sort things and organize stuff. So you could find a keyword in it, or you could find a person's name, and then it would put everything in one batch that had anything to do with, say, that witness or anything about that particular defendant. So clearly, it's necessary, and you have to do that if you have a case, and that's what we did. But in doing that, and I'm looking at, well, how do I use AI? And it took a while, but what happened is I just realized that where it impacts me the most, where it impacts my law firm the most, I think, and I'm not saying it doesn't matter for other areas, but what it really comes down to is search. And, this happened to us already because prior to the internet and prior to the advent of the search engines, and all the search engines, I remember there was this thing called go.com, and I think there was Lycos, and then there was Yahoo, and several of them. And that, those search engines, when the internet came out, they were all vying, for market share. And then Google comes in, and Google has created this algorithm that's by far the best algorithm for everybody else. And so everything changes, because if you're not on Google for their organic search, your business is just drying up, because all of a sudden the world just changed. And that's happening with AI right now. That's where the impact is. And so it's important to understand the differences. And the other thing is, in terms of the speed of change, most people agree that what used to take in the past 50 years for change to happen, that cycle is now, people say it's 5 years. So we get 50 years of technology change every 5 years. And if you look at the big companies that became obsolete, IBM, I can't remember their market share, but it was huge, and they didn't keep up with technology changes. They didn't follow the idea that we would have personal computers. They just didn't believe it, if I understand it correctly. If you look at Eastman Kodak in the film business, you look at a company that came and went faster, Blockbuster, renting VHS tapes. This is going to happen to us. And what's going to happen is search is going to change. And Google is spending a lot of time and money and energy to keep Google alive. And an example of that is if you do searches on Google, you'll see that you have a little AI version that comes up, and that's Gemini. That's Google's version of AI. And so they're already giving us the options, because what they don't want us to do is they don't want us to go to ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot and the other things, the other search engines, which I'll list here in a minute. They're scrambling to develop. So what's going to happen to us when Google first started taking over? The Google search is based on keywords. So everybody's looking for this keyword. They want your keywords in your websites. You want keywords in your blogs. Everybody's telling us you got to write these blogs. You got to publish this content. And because at the time, Google also rewarded volume. And Google is constantly changing that to try to improve search, because when people search, Google wants them to find what they're looking for. And so they're measuring things like, if they find you, how long do they stay on your site? Because if they find you and they click away, the message to Google is that they didn't find what they wanted, so you're not being rewarded. Either you're being punished by Google because they didn't find what they wanted, at least the way the computer and algorithms see it, or they're not staying on there. So if they don't stay on there, that means they didn't find what they wanted. And Google wants people to find what they want, because when you search, if you don't find what you want, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And so they're not going to remain in control. And so in this kind of situation, there's some differences in AI search and so-called Google search. And I think it's important to at least understand this. And I know that when I talk to the people that do these different things for me, that whether it's local service ads, the LSAs, whether it's pay-per-click, whether it's on Google or Bing or somebody else, whether it's an organic search, whether it's the map location search. Over the years, when I've talked to the people that do this for me, and most of the people that do it for me, I've had long-term relationships with them. And when I call them and talk to them, many times they say, it's not bad talking to you, Greg, and because when things aren't working right and we're talking about it, that you have some understanding of what we're talking about. Whereas when we talk to other clients, they're just in a panic mode. They're upset. They're ready to fire us. They're screaming at us because they're, quote, paying all this money and it's not working. And over the years, I've had this experience, and it's still going on, with Kelly, who's my firm administrator, is that, and it was this way with my former, I had a chief operating officer, I had other people that worked in my firm, and we're running the company together. They're helping me run the company. And so they see this money, this spend, and they're concerned about it. So they ask me questions, and it's just hopeless because, and I told Kelly the other day, I said, I don't know that you even need to understand this. And it's not that I don't want her to understand it. I would want her to understand it. I wanted them all to understand it. And I explain it to them, and they still don't have a clue. They have no idea what I'm talking about. They don't know the difference between pay-per-click and a map-based search. And in their defense, probably it's because everything has the same name to them, which is Google. So whether it's LSA, whether it's pay-per-click, whether it's organic, whether it's map-based and location-based, it's all Google. And it's all the same thing, but it's not the same thing. It's not even close to the same thing. And if you do this for yourself, or if you understand it, which I would hope many of you do, then you get that. You probably have a better understanding than some of the people that work for me in these different roles. So what do you need to know? Well, the search engines, I think that if you look at it, you've got Chat GPT, which is OpenAI. You got Gemini, which is Google. You have Claude, which is Anthropic. You have Copilot, which is Microsoft. You have Grok, which is xAI, which is Elon Musk. You have AWS, which is Amazon. And you also have this thing called Perplexity. And Perplexity ultimately may be the winner of everything because it's in the universities. It's for people doing research. And so there are a lot of students and things that when they go to college and they're using AI to go to college and do what they're supposed to do and to learn and grow, that's what they're introduced to, Perplexity. Whereas somebody like me, a law firm owner, until recently, I'd never heard of Perplexity. The reason, though, Perplexity is preferred by them is it's really citation-based research based on credibility more so than just scraping things off the internet, because there's a lot of junk on the internet, and early on, and to some extent it still happens, but less and less because AI keeps getting better and better. Every day, every week, every month, it gets better. And so what AI is trying to do basically on search is go back to where lawyers, didn't advertise. I mean, there's a caveat to that, but go back to where lawyers don't advertise. And so if you have a good reputation, you cannot fake that. If everybody that comes to you to have you represent them, and it's all what we call word of mouth, referrals, just this knowledge of this is a good lawyer, this is the best lawyer, and people tell each other that, AI is trying to replicate that. So how do they get real information? And that's the challenge for AI right now. And so they're going out to different places, and maybe some odd places. For example, if you go on the app Reddit and you look at, or you do a search and you see Reddit has answered these questions, the value for that for AI search is that those are real people talking about real people, talking about real products. And so that's valid. And it also, the idea is that, the marketplace of ideas, that when enough people who are sincerely offering real advice chime in, then there's an overall consensus, of who's the best, or how is this the best product. And it works really well for products, and less so for services, because if you have a worldwide product, this is a different thing than if you have a law firm in a specific location. But recently I learned that to get that valid information right now, it's believed that Google is paying on a contract to Reddit. They're paying at least $5 million a month to have access to those Reddit answers. Now, and that was a huge part in a short window. And at one point, Reddit was running 80 or 90% of the AI search results. Since then, it's my understanding, it's dropped down to 30 or 20%, but it's still huge. So you see, the issue here is where is AI finding the information? And so the other thing to understand is that keyword searches are, I want a criminal defense lawyer near me. I want a DUI lawyer in Myrtle Beach. I want an estate planning lawyer in Chicago. I want an estate planning lawyer in Miami who has the best reviews, or something like that. And so it gives you the answers, but it gives you answers, not the answer. AI searches are much longer. The questions are longer, and the answers are longer, and the time that somebody stays, if you're doing that search on ChatGPT, you stay on ChatGPT longer. You're not going anywhere else. And then if you've done AI searches, you know that it gives you the answer, makes suggestion, gives you the answer, makes suggestions, and you get a deep dive. And ultimately what people believe is that will ultimately end up giving you, one option or two or three options. I heard Gary Vee one time talk about this really several years ago, where he said, we're going to get to the point to where when you do a search, there's one result for what you're looking for. And what you want to be is you want to be that one. Now, whether that happens or not, nobody knows. But there's some things about this that, for example, since AI doesn't read keywords, it reads what's called schema. And then there's this thing called the long language model, which is what it gets put into AI. So these are things that will matter. It's changing search. People that do SEO for law firms and other businesses, they're actively engaged in this, and what we put out there in order to be found is changing, and the smart people are keeping up with it. So there's a lot more that I could say about long language model, LLM. If you hear the term LLM, that's what they're referring to. LLM is different than keywords. So that's where we're going. At Prosper Law, we're putting together an AI for criminal defense. We're going to put it together a seminar and offer it to people to indoctrinate people, and at least let people start to see. So hopefully I'll have some chance to go into some more of this later. If you're interested in growing your law firm, if you're interested in AI, if you're interested in being on the cutting edge of law firm growth, reach out to me at Prosper at Law. You can go to prosperatlaw.com. You can go to Prosper at Law events. Just Google Prosper at Law events. You'll see the calendar of our masterminds. And if you're interested and growing your law firm and not getting left behind by AI or any other thing, reach out to us. Hope this was helpful. Until next time, I'm Greg McCollum.
If you want to know more, go to prosperatelaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.